What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Early Edge. My name is Sia Nejad. I'm the counselor of cash, and I've got a really good show to bring to all of you who are already in the chat. We're going to do a March Madness bracket fill-in right here, right now, with some of the best minds at SportsLine. Certainly some of the best college basketball minds at SportsLine. And if you think I was leaving anybody out, nope. Chip Patterson, Larry Hartstein, Zack Cimini, Tom Casale, Mike McClure. Mackenzie Brooks would have been here, by the way, but she is traveling. She is on assignment. So many different places, but we've got the six of us. I am going to be really truly hosting this one, guys, because I want to hear your picks. We're going to go through the bracket. We got 5 here, right? So if it's 3-2 on a pick, we're going to advance that team 4-1, 5-0, whatever the case may be. The chat is going to be filling out the Midwest bracket. You've already done a little bit. You're going to be doing a little bit more. You're going to be weighing in on our picks. I think we should just bring up the bracket and get going because we have so many picks to go through. But Chip Patterson, let me just start with you. You have been kind of center stage in conference tournament stuff. You had that live show with Mackenzie Brooks, and now here you are. I mean, it's got to be Christmas today, correct?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, honestly, it started last night when they introduced the South region, and I just got to let out a loud cackle. And why did I let out a loud cackle? Because one of the great principles of the universe of what would be the funniest possible result came in. And it came in when those North Carolina Tar Heels were introduced as an 11 seed in the first four, in the very first region that they introduced on that wonderful, wonderful selection show on CBS, America's Most Watched Network, the Network of Stars. The wouldn't it be funny principle comes through again. North Carolina ruled out by most of the preeminent bracketologists, including our own Jerry Palm, but into the field. So we'll see what happens with the Tar Heels on the court, but very, very funny to watch everyone's outrage play out.
Let's go around the horn before we bring up the bracket. Maybe the most surprising thing, and let's just spend like 20 seconds on it each, gentlemen, because I do want to get to filling out this field of 68. Larry, biggest surprise or biggest takeaway from Selection Sunday on CBS, of course?
Michigan got a terrible deal getting a 5 seed after winning the Big Ten. North Carolina has no business in the tournament. But remember a couple years ago, I think it was USC, there have been other teams that didn't deserve to be in. And it's a separate thing from will they make a run? And maybe they play with that chip to show people that they deserve to be in the tournament. But I believe Tom will know offhand. But there have been a couple teams in that first four that have won a couple of games, despite the fact they shouldn't have been in.
Tom, I don't know if you know offhand or not, but respond to that and anything big takeaway-wise before we get into the brackets.
Yeah, I mean, UCLA a couple years ago made a big run, and Larry's 100% right. Like the way the committee selects teams, North Carolina probably shouldn't have been in, but in my ranking, San Diego State's the worst team in the tournament. So I think UNC probably wins that game, but like Larry said, those are two separate arguments. And the thing that stood out to me is they didn't do Florida any favors. And that West is loaded with St. John's, Texas Tech, Maryland. I mean, that is a really tough region. So if Florida gets to the Final Four, they will have deserved it.
Zack Cimini, you're out west, specifically in Las Vegas. Any big takeaways from Selection Sunday?
Yeah, it's just that with North Carolina as well, but don't discount them. We've seen those double-digit power teams make runs, as Tom mentioned, with UCLA. We saw it last year with NC State being an 11 seed, and you can't forget the team in my background here, Syracuse, which everyone was laughing about way back in 2016. They did it as well. So you can still get there. They're in the tournament. That's the biggest thing.
Mike McClure, how about your big takeaway before we get to the brackets?
Like everyone else here, I think that per the criteria to get in, North Carolina didn't deserve to get in. Now, the fact that they are in, there are 33 teams in the tournament that are worse than them at a minimum, maybe 40. So I think that they're definitely a team that has a relatively interesting path. Obviously, you never want to play an additional game with a play-in, but I do think they have the makeup of a team that could win multiple games. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I do also agree that teams like Florida and Michigan both got pretty poor draws considering the result that they had in those conference tournaments. Some of it because of the timing. It does certainly feel like we're not crediting the conference tournaments enough in the seeding. And you have to start to ask that question. Is it because the one game finishes 60 minutes before the bracket is revealed, we know the bracket has already been made up at that point. So I think that that's something that should be addressed going forward.
All right. And by
the tournaments.
Absolutely. I do want to remind everybody too, our bracket challenge, we have the scroll at the bottom here, but if you're listening to the podcast, it's at cbssports.com/early edge. It's a very easy URL. They made it super easy on everybody. Again, cbssports.com/early edge. It'll take you right to the bracket. There's like no nonsense where you have to have like 10 steps in between. You just fill out the bracket from there. So go to cbssports.com/early edge and get into our early edge bracket. You get a free year of Paramount Plus if you win, but you also get to come onto the early edge and give out a pick if you win. So, and by the way, bragging rights too. If you finish inside the top 10, top 20, you can kind of talk to us about that, because certainly not all of us are going to finish anywhere near there. I'm not going to. I'll probably be in the hundreds somewhere if I'm lucky. So let's get to it. Let's start with the South. We're going to have Ben, who of course is on the ones and twos. He's going to bring this up. And again, we're going to go game by game. We're just going to poll shop here. Chip, I'm going to start with you because you're right there under me. Let's go Auburn and the play-in. I mean, I don't need that. I don't think I need to go through all five here.
We can go. We can just take Auburn. We can advance them. I do like Alabama State. I don't know if anybody's got any other first four thoughts there, but I think that the Hornets will be able to get there, create a nice little in-state rivalry. But yeah, give me Bruce Pearl's Tigers advancing.
Yeah, I don't know that I need to take a poll here. Does anybody want to give like a hand up and just like say a word about Alabama State, this play-in game or anything like that? Go ahead, Zach.
It's probably going to be my first play of the tournament on St. Francis, because Alabama State, the SWAC team, I think they led the country in close victories right there with Michigan. They've been winning. So this is one of those, if you're looking at the spread versus money line, maybe you take them on the money line, but spread-wise, I'm going to be on St. Francis. The big story already going into the tournament is the coach's son from Alabama State. I believe his last name is Medlock. So that's already an angle as well. But Alabama State, they play close games, even in their SWAC. All three victories were so close in their conference tournament. They might have not got past in the last game there, but there was a couple injuries late for Jackson State. So I'm going to look at St. Francis in the first round, in the first 4 + 3.5.
I love that. Put all the betting picks out there as well. We're going to have this show tomorrow at 12:30 as well, and it's going to focus on the betting, and especially these first round games. But if you have them now, let's hear some of them now as well. I mean, I haven't heard so far in 24 hours a play on St. Francis, so I absolutely love that. All right, we go to Louisville, Creighton, and Tom Casale. I actually have to start with you on this one because I was in the Discord yesterday, and I know you and Mike McClure were in there, and you actually gave out a pick on Louisville money line, correct?
Yeah, there was two teams that I liked that was going to be based on matchup, and they were Louisville and Missouri. Missouri's matchup I don't love. Louisville, I think, got a great matchup because they're going to be in your face. They're going to turn you over. They're athletic, and that's where Creighton struggles. And, I do want to specify that, Mike likes Kansas, which I'm not necessarily that high on, but I think he makes a good argument, and I like where Kansas is located in the tournament. But UConn isn't any good, all right? Like, they're just not good. So when you beat UConn, that's not an impressive win to me. The Big East is down. I think Louisville wins this game rather easily. The only negative here is it's that noon Thursday game, which I'm like 1 in 38 lifetime. So I made the play before I saw the schedule, but I do like the matchup.
All right, Chip Patterson, what do we like in Louisville, Creighton? Are we on Team Casale here, or are you going the other way?
No, I'm going with the Cards here. Yeah, I think that Louisville is another team that you could argue is probably a quality of team that is better than 8. 8 would say that you're number 32 in this field, and I would have Louisville much higher than that. And so, yeah, give me the Cards here. Also, bonus, this game's in Lexington, Kentucky.
Yeah.
So we want to start talking about like sites and times and who got the advantage here. The fact that a Louisville fan base that has been absolutely energized by Pat Kelsey this season, that they are going to be able to try to fill up their rivals' arena, not just for this game, but the next one that we're going to talk about, big home court advantage, in my opinion, for the Cards.
Yeah, Auburn having to play what will feel like an away game potentially if Louisville wins that game. So we got 2-0 on Louisville. Let's round it out. Larry, which side are we on here? Oh, you're on mute. But your body language screamed Louisville there.
5 with the guys with Louisville, sorry.
All right. And so who are we leaving out? Zack Cimini, where are we at on Louisville, Creighton?
I've got Creighton in my bracket, and Sometimes you can be fooled by these teams getting lower seeds, and I think that's the case in the ACC. Clemson, to me, a 5 seed, Louisville, an 8 seed, North Carolina, 11 seed. We've seen this with the Mountain West getting these lower seeds playing well. In Louisville, you got to remember, they put this team together this year. Creighton, they've had that longevity. Those players have been there year over year over year.
That's true. Mike McClure, Louisville or Creighton?
In honor of Buckets being in the chat, I'm going to give you this. In a one-on-one confrontation, a Blue Jay is likely to win due to its larger size and more aggressive nature, although Cardinals can be surprisingly fierce when defending their territories. This is close to their territory. I do lean Creighton only because I would like them just a touch against the spread. I think both teams are actually underseeded, believe it or not. Leaning Creighton, but not the strongest play. And as Tom mentioned, this is the very first game of the tournament. It'll be the very early morning game.
Bird fight. Bird fight.
We do have Buckets in the chat, by the way. And if you watch the early edge this morning, he likes Wofford against Tennessee. We're going to get to that game later on. But thank you, Buckets, for being in the chat. His dice and his coin flips, they don't lie. So it's 3-2 Louisville. So Louisville will advance against Auburn. Let's go down the board here. Michigan and UC San Diego. Mike McClure, I'm going to start with you here. I mean, I did hear a nice stat about UC San Diego in terms of, hey, they can certainly turn you over. Could be a problem for Michigan. It's your classic 12-5 spot where people like to pick an upset. Where are you at in Michigan in terms of advancing, not against the spread, but in terms of advancing in this bracket?
I picked Michigan to advance here still, but it is not the best matchup for them. Not only did I think they get a little underseeded as a 5 after what they did in the conference tournament, this is not the easiest matchup here. This UC San Diego team is good. I think they can cover a spread. I think that this number is very tight, but I will be on the Michigan side here in terms of advancing in the bracket.
All right, Larry, who's going to advance, Michigan or UC San Diego?
I'll go with the Tritons. Everybody seems to be on them. They force a lot of turnovers, and we know that is Michigan's bugaboo. And we've seen these Big Ten champs after that grueling run struggle early in the tournament. Now, I do want to say one thing, guys. My bracket I had to fill out last night for deadline purposes to get on the site, to get on CBS. So if what I'm saying now conflicts, I'm going to take a pass on that because I needed time to digest things.
Fair enough. Chip Patterson, are we advancing Michigan?
I am advancing Michigan. I'm concerned about the guard play against a team that forces so many turnovers. The fact that UC San Diego against top 50 opponents had really good results and even close margins against the better teams that they played. Not a lot of losses, but still something to keep an eye on. But the Wolverines in that Big Ten tournament really impressed me. I mean, they were underdogs in every single game, right? And they end up winning every single game outright. It's like Dusty May can coach or something. It's crazy. So I'm going to go with the Wolverines to advance.
I have a feeling tomorrow this might be one of the games one of you has featured from a betting standpoint. Zach, are we advancing Michigan here over UCSD?
I'm going to take UCSD, but this is a tough one right now. If you ask me tomorrow, I might say Michigan. So I'm just impressed. When you look at teams that are in this tournament, the lower level teams, UC San Diego, they run just impressive offense, set after set after set. And that could give Michigan problems because they are so fluid. They're going to go on a run or two that's going to challenge this Michigan team.
Okay, Tom, we're already advancing Michigan because we got 3 votes for them, but I'm just curious, are you advancing Michigan or are you going for the upset here?
Yeah, listen, this is a tough game. I mean, I'm with Zach. If you ask me 5 minutes from now, I might change. I took Michigan. The game reminds me a little bit of South Dakota State Providence from a couple years ago. Providence won all these close games, right? They were number 1 by far in like Ken Palm's luck factor. And South Dakota State actually closed as a slight favorite in that game. And the game was close, but Providence found a way to win. Michigan just finds a way to win these tight games. I think it's going to be close, but I give Michigan the slightest lean.
All right. Michigan is going to advance. There are a lot of comments in the chat about this game. Eric David says, hail to the victors. I said Wagner because Wagner, didn't he play for Michigan a few years back? Anyway, Franz Wagner I'm talking about. Mitch Wagner's 22 says, I think UCSD will struggle against Michigan bigs. Of course, they have those 2 bigs. And then we've got, by the way, thanks for being in here. Hit the like button. Jason Harrod, Mark Gillett, Joe Neuenfeld is in here. Some unfamiliar names, which is great. Make sure you're subscribed to this SportsLine channel because a ton of content coming your way across all sports this week. All right, let's go Texas A&M and Yale. Tom Casale, I'm going to start with you on this one. Are we advancing Texas A&M or upset special here?
Yeah, this was the one I think it took the longest for me to make a pick when I did my brackets. I ended up going Texas A&M, but they're one of those teams that's hard to gauge because they don't shoot necessarily well, so they got to dominate the boards. They got to turn you over. I probably would have taken Yale if they didn't beat Auburn last year. So Texas A&M is going to be ready for this game. Again, it's going to be a close game. A lot of these lower seed game, they're pretty tight. This is a pretty even game, but I lean Texas A&M slightly.
Zack Cimini, Texas A&M or Yale? Who are we advancing?
Just give me Texas A&M right now. I don't love Buzz Williams in March, but give me Texas A&M.
Mike McClure?
Yeah, A&M for me. They just enough of a talent gap. I think it could be interesting for 32 of the 40 minutes of play, but A&M should pull away here.
Larry, are we co-signing all of this? It's 3-0.
Yeah, I'll sign that. I don't think Wade Taylor is going out that early.
Chip?
I will offer my dissent, even as the decision passes through at 4-1. Give me Yale. New Haven, Connecticut doesn't just produce great pizza. It also has one hell of a basketball coach in James Jones. And this Ivy League competition compared to what they're going to face with the Texas A&M front line is nowhere close, but this was the best offensive rebounding team in the Ivy League in conference play. It's a group that understands the assignment when it comes to crashing the boards. I've got this one as Yale, but I don't think it would be a long stay if they pull off one win.
All right, let's finish this portion of the bracket. By the way, we're going to spend a little bit more time on the games that we know are going to happen, which is obviously these round one games. As we get further into the bracket, we're going to make calls, but we're not necessarily going to spend as much time on the hypothetical matchups here because that show would take 3 hours here, right? So, so we'll finish the round one games. Ole Miss versus the UNC, the controversial UNC SDSU winner here. Let's see, Zach, I'm going to start with you. Is Ole Miss advancing, or are we taking one of these play-in winners? Harder to do right now because we don't know who actually is going to win that game, but nonetheless, who you picking to advance?
I'm going to go with history here, and I'll just take the play-in winner. I'll go with North Carolina over Ole Miss. Having that momentum of playing that first game is always beneficial for the play-in game team.
Tom?
Yeah, listen, I think one of these second tier SEC teams could win a game or two. I kind of like Ole Miss. North Carolina would be a tough matchup, but I lean Rebels.
All right. Chip Patterson, I'll go to you next.
The stat we were looking for earlier is 12 of the 13 seasons since the first four was introduced. A first four winner has won at least one game in the round of 64 to get to the round of 32, if not gone farther. I believe that North Carolina will be that. And also, if we do get North Carolina against Ole Miss, I would not be surprised to see North Carolina as a narrow betting favorite over the 6 seed Rebels.
Very interesting. Mike McClure, you're nodding your head. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, North Carolina would be a 1.5 point favorite over Ole Miss if they win. Right now I would make it about 1, but again, giving some credit to North Carolina for having won that game head-to-head against San Diego State. I think that if you're looking for leverage when filling out a bracket, I think this is one of the most obvious choices. And what I mean by that, Ben, if you could scroll back to the top on this, you'll see basically who picked who. It'll tell you 75% of the field has picked Ole Miss. So when you look at the next matchup here, if you talk about Ole Miss and North Carolina, we think that's a pick 'em at worst, 50%. You're getting a lot of percent edge just by simply taking North Carolina when you know 75% of the field has selected Ole Miss. So now let's play the hypothetical that San Diego State wins. I would make Ole Miss a -2.5 to -3.5 favorite in that game. That's going to put it a little closer to probably 61, 62, 63%, but certainly not the 75. So either way here, you are getting pretty good leverage on the field by simply taking the play-in winner in this particular matchup.
Yeah, that's a lesson in how to fill out your bracket. If you're joining us late, go to cbssports.com to get all your brackets that you can fill out across the board. But the early edge bracket is at cbssports.com/early edge. That will take you right to our bracket. You can fill it out and you can be part of this early edge experience. All right, let's go. Iowa State, Lipscomb. Larry, I'm going to start with you. Iowa State, I think, continuing to deal with some injury issues, but they're a 3 seed. Lipscomb's a 14. Are we just advancing the Cyclones here?
Yeah, I'll advance them. Gilbert's out though. I don't like their chances of going deep though.
Chip?
Yeah, I advanced them here, but it is big warning signs because that's just not injury. That is like TJ Otzelberger's quotes, Keyshawn Gilbert's social media posts. We've got a couple of teams where player availability seems to be a contentious issue behind closed doors. I do not like, I'm all about vibes, Sia. I do not like the vibes around this Cyclones team. A group that was 22-2 when they had all 8 of their players in the lineup of the 8-man rotation, 3-6 if even one was missing, and now Gilbert's not going to be available the rest of the way.
Mike, round one, in spite of all that, we're advancing them past Lipscomb.
Yeah, definitely. I might advance Iowa State even further, just depending on again what we just talked about, who's picking who. I think they're a team that's going to get drastically undervalued the rest of the way. So.
Yeah, I mean, I know even in their conference tournament, what was it against BYU? I actually had the pick on BYU, and it was because I thought, I guess Gilbert and Lipsy were going to be out of that game, but they were really competitive against BYU, even without those two guys. So maybe they can do a little bit more damage in the tournament. Zach, are we out on Iowa State? We've already advanced them, but just real quick, is it a yes on Iowa State for round one?
Yeah, it is. And with the ASUN, their conference tournament ended 8 days ago, so there's definitely going to be a layoff factor there. That's going to play to the strengths of Iowa State and in terms of defense. And like you said, they still been competitive even without a couple guys in their lineup.
All right, Tom, Iowa State round one.
Yeah, I would have thought about Lipscomb if they played a different team maybe in round one, but this isn't the matchup.
Okay, let's do Michigan State. Bryant's going to be an easy one. Let's go to Marquette, New Mexico. Let's see. Mike McClure, I'm going to start with you. I think this is a really interesting matchup. Marquette been like very underwhelming all year, in my opinion. Maybe Mountain West can get involved here, right?
Yeah, they might be able to. I think they could cover a spread. I did advance Marquette here. I will say that I don't like either of these teams going forward in the tournament. I think Marquette, we're still catching a little bit of name value from their, history in this tournament, but I do think they sneak by here and advance in the bracket.
All right, Roger Long joining the chat. He says, look at this crew of hoop heads. Chip, you're a hoop head. Do you like Marquette or New Mexico to advance?
I picked New Mexico, but I would listen to an argument. You talked about where Shaka Smart's team has been. It has not been the same team since like January 3rd, right? And they did give us that, the really hard fought win against Xavier back in the Big East tournament, show a little bit of life. Congratulations. I think that was their first win against an NCAA tournament team since January 3rd. And Xavier's in the first 4. So the offense has looked really clunky. It's like Cam Jones, hero ball or bust.
Yeah.
You always know what you're going to get out of a Shaka Smart team in terms of their defensive intensity, but I just think you've got maybe a little bit of a higher ceiling with Donovan Dent and New Mexico.
Yeah, I think I'd be on New Mexico here, but my vote doesn't matter here. Larry, your vote does. I believe it's 2-0 to Marquette. Are we making it 3-0 or 2-1?
Oh, I said New Mexico.
Oh, you said 1-1. Excuse me. Okay, so Larry, break the at least temporary tie right now.
Yeah, another vote for New Mexico just because of how bad Marquette has looked down the stretch. It's been just a straight trend line of mediocrity for a couple months.
Zach?
New Mexico as well. In these first round games, sometimes it's as simple as saying who's the best player on the court. And when it's a guard play, I even elevate them further. And the best player on the court is Donovan Dent.
Tom Casale, are we? It's New Mexico advancing regardless, but are you on Marquette or New Mexico to advance here?
Yeah, listen, New Mexico was a hot pick last year. I think maybe people were 1 year off. Some of these teams really have to create turnovers to generate offense. Marquette's one of them. And the way New Mexico handles the ball, I don't think it'll be easy for them to do that. Close game, but I lean New Mexico here. All
right. So we have New Mexico advancing. Michigan State, Brian, does anybody I don't want to go through all 5 here because I don't think we need to. Does anybody want to raise their hand for Brian advancing past Michigan State? I'm assuming that's a no. Okay, so let's handle the rest of this bracket, and we'll be a lot quicker here so we can get to the other region. We're going to start at the top, Auburn and Louisville. Tom, I have to start with you here because I know you liked Louisville in round 1. Are you advancing them past Auburn?
I think Auburn will slaughter either one of those teams, and if it's Creighton, I might give out my first play, college basketball play on SportsLine that's over a unit. I think they will massacre Creighton.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because Auburn's stock may be a touch down, so maybe you get a couple of points that you shouldn't be getting there. Chip Patterson, Auburn, Louisville. Are we advancing Auburn?
Look, you're going to ask for my vote, and I'm going to tell you what my bracket says. but that is me playing a little bit of bracket games and just rolling with the vibes. I've got the cards with the second round upset against a team that finished with 3 losses in their final 4 games. I had a lot of fun talking with John Henson, who was on our SportsLine stream and with me in studio for a couple days. And he just kept coming back. And the word he kept using was confidence. He was like, I've been a part of these teams that are 1 seeds and 2 seeds. And sometimes when you just run that hot, he just kept saying, like, I wonder if they peaked early. I wonder if they peaked early. And if they did peak early and they cannot lean on that experience to find another gear here in the NCAA tournament, well, then losing a game in the state of Kentucky to a resurgent Louisville program is one way I could see it going. So it's a lot of what, like, narrative plays, like you would do on the early wedge. But I've got Louisville in my bracket.
Maestro.
Yeah, Auburn for sure.
And Mike McClure, who we going with?
Auburn. And if Louisville somehow beats Creighton by, say, like 4 possessions, like 10 plus points, and they open this game at 7 for Auburn, I would lay the 7 with Auburn. I think the spread for Auburn against Louisville will be 9.5 or 10.
I love it. Tom obviously agreeing with that. All right, Zach.
I like that Louisville winning by 10 plus points. I'm down with that.
Yeah. Zach, we're already advancing Auburn, but any thoughts on Louisville pulling an upset here?
No, it's going to be Auburn for me. I think they're going to be easy to defend Louisville, who even in the ACC tournament, I saw a lot of bad shots, even from their leading scorer, Terrence Edwards. He shot horrible from the field. They'll let them get 20 points, shooting 7 for 20, 7 for 25.
All right, Zach, we're going to let you kick things off. Michigan, Texas A&M, 5 versus 4.
Give me Texas A&M. I think they do end up playing Auburn. Michigan, to me, maybe I'm just not impressed. They've had so many waves, ups and downs. I'm going to ride them down after winning the Big Ten Conference tournament.
Tom?
Yeah, I'm going to go Texas A&M here.
Okay. Mike McClure?
Texas A&M here for me. I still I'll give a little credit to the conference they play in. It prepares them pretty well for matchups like this, and I think they can do enough defensively to turn Michigan over.
I believe we already have a majority. Chip or Larry, anything to say about in your brackets, maybe Michigan advancing?
No, just because I didn't even have them winning that first game as we talked about. So yeah, I'll go with A&M. And
go ahead, Chip.
Yeah, the Michigan's floor and ceiling are so far apart to me. So, but if they take care of the ball against a team like Texas A&M, if they take care of the ball against a team like UC San Diego, then they can cause some matchup problems with Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden. But I'm not going to put a big fight against the Aggie wave that we've got right here.
Okay, so let's move on to scrolling down. We've got the play-in winner against Iowa State. We kind of, some of you addressed this early, Chip. We don't know who it's going to be, but we have plays on that. Either way, who's advancing out of this one, Iowa State or the play-in winner?
I will vote for the play-in winner, but I think that this one is absolutely coin toss type scenario where Iowa State, within the context of a single game, can be like 3 different teams. Forget like game to game or week to week. So the inconsistencies make it really tough to call, but I'll vote for play-in winner.
Mike, Iowa State or the play-in winner?
I'm going to lean. I took Iowa State here. As far as betting the game itself, it'll be a very interesting number. I think the number, if Iowa State was healthy against UNC, that number is probably 5.5. If they both get to the same spot, I think it's literally going to be 1.5. In which case I would be taking a shot on Iowa State over that UNC team. So I'm going to advance Iowa State here.
That's 2 for Iowa State. Zach, are we moving Iowa State on?
Yeah, it's going to be Iowa State for me. I foresee them playing North Carolina, and what we've seen with North Carolina, no defense. So that would be their 3rd game in 6 days. That's going to be a problem against Cyclones.
It's good. Tom, is it Iowa State for you as well?
It is, and I'll just say this. We'll see if I'm right or wrong. I get the play-in stuff. I think we're talking about the wrong play-in winner. We'll discuss the other one on the other side of the bracket. I like their path a little bit more.
Okay, and Larry, I think you were the one left out here. It's 4-0 for Iowa State. I'm just curious, would it be the play-in winner as it maybe a game theory play, or would you be going Iowa State?
No, I like Iowa State. Let's make it a sweep.
Okay, Michigan State, New Mexico. I would imagine this is an easier one to call. Zach, I'm going to start with you. Are we advancing Michigan State?
I'm going to advance Michigan State, but I do think it's going to be one of the games where the higher seed is pushed till the end, but I do have Michigan State winning.
Tom?
I agree with Zach. I think they're rebounding. New Mexico State does a good job on the boards, but I think that will be the deciding factor in this game.
Mike, it's 2-0 for Michigan State. Are we making it 3?
Yeah, Michigan State, and I'll even say Michigan State wins double digits here.
Yeah.
New Mexico plays very fast. That's not great against this Michigan State team, and Michigan State's going to kill them at the free throw line.
And Chip, it seemed like you very much agreed with that take.
Yeah, I love that. I was just guessing that Michigan State would probably be like 5-point favorite, 4.5, maybe, somewhere like 5.5. Mike can, tell me what he would think on that, but I would lay that. I would race to go ahead and lay that on open, because I do think it's a game that the Spartans would dominate. Michigan State has depth, man. Like, they just have so many bodies that they can throw on you. So everybody can just go at 150 miles an hour, going for rebounds. Like, the defensive intensity, especially when it comes to the front court, just wears teams down. So all Sparty for me.
Jen M says Sparty wins this region. Mike, do you have an idea of what this spread might be, Michigan State versus New Mexico?
If it is 5.5, it won't last but 5 minutes. I think it'll be 7.5. Is probably where it would be.
Fair enough. Larry, and you are also advancing Michigan State, correct?
Yeah, I have them winning the region. I mean, I think the last time that Izzo had a team with this much talent, with this high of a seed, they made it to the Final Four, and he's gone to 8 Final Fours. And I just love the way the region sets up with Iowa State banged up, Texas A&M, doesn't shoot the ball. We know Auburn's been a little vulnerable. I think it's Michigan State to the Final Four.
Very interesting. Okay, so we're going to zoom out here, courtesy of Ben. Let's go with, let's just stick with Michigan State and Iowa State. Consensus to me, based on what I'm hearing from everybody, is that it's probably going to be Michigan State advancing this round. Raise your hand if you actually want to make the argument for what looks to be a banged-up Iowa State team advancing past Michigan State here. Anyone? Oh, Mike McClure, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just Iowa State is still an extremely talented team. And it really would just come down to a little game theory in terms of filling out your bracket. I don't know, Ben, can we click on the little eye there on this matchup? I know this is only giving us data on who has what team advanced so far. But as you can see, 58% have Michigan State still in at this point and 19% on Iowa State. It's just going to be another one of those massive leverage opportunities. I would only suggest this if you don't have Michigan State, playing in the title game, right? But if you're someone who thinks Michigan State could get bounced at the Elite Eight or right in that range, then it would make sense to just essentially blindly play against them if you don't have them as one of your Final Four teams.
It didn't even occur to me to look at those percentages at the top. Obviously, if you're considering game theory, which you very much should be, and Mike, you please correct me, if anybody else correct me if I'm wrong, but looking at, the amount of people that have one team advancing versus the other should tell you a lot about maybe where you should go. Not all the time, but where you should go sometimes from a game theory play. Mike, did I capture that well enough? I mean, I know you just kind of said it as well.
Yeah, it becomes more complicated the further you get into the tournament. But in round one, for example, when you're just looking at straight up round one, that's giving you a true number of who's picking who to win a game. So yeah, essentially 97% here. It would be more interesting if we looked at like an 8-9 matchup.
Yeah.
But you're going to get a percentage there. Then you can go look at your sports book, see whatever that line is, use the odds calculator on SportsLine, type in that money line, it converts it to a percent for you. And you can start to look for gaps. And what I would consider to be a meaningful gap in a round one game would be anything north of 10% difference between what your bracket field is doing versus what the implied odds are on the money line at the sportsbook.
Okay. And Tom, you wanted to levy an argument for Iowa State in this Michigan State matchup as well.
Yeah, Mike pretty much said what I was going to say. Like this, I thought it was a toss-up. And I kind of thought more people would be on Michigan State, so I took Iowa State. So I basically went with the same theory he did.
And I assume the other three, because you didn't say anything, Zach, are you also on Iowa State or potentially, or is it Michigan State advancing for you?
Yeah, Iowa State is going to be for me as well. And I think anytime you have injuries, sometimes it can help you because you're going to shorten your bench. You're going to know who's on the court. And for Michigan State at times, they can get a little wacky with their shot selection. We've seen it in a couple of games where they've been able to push late, but they've been in some games where they've had issues in that under 10 mark. Team like Iowa State, they can get past Izzo.
So confirm, Mike, Tom, and Zach, by a head shake, all three of you like Iowa State here, correct? Okay, so we got Iowa State advancing. I assume that's under Larry and Chip's objection. Do one of you two want to speak on behalf of Michigan State here before? I mean, Iowa State's moving on regardless.
I'm going to stay in the show, but under protest.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm with Larry. I've got Michigan State winning the region. So I'm
okay.
Yeah, I think this is one of those. I was with the 2019 Michigan State team. Sia, they were up in D.C. for the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. They ended up beating Zion and the rest of that Duke team.
Yeah,
and it was just I was really close with that group. NCAA tournament's awesome. Open locker rooms, like you really get a good feel for what's going on, pulse of a team. I think this is another one of those special Sparty teams.
All right. Eric David saying grad level course in gambling game theory from M2. And what's so cool is that the tool that is on the on CBSSports.com and you can use while you're filling out any CBSSports.com bracket, including the early edge one at CBSSports.com/early edge. You can just click on any matchup you want. And the tool is going to show you where the game theory edge lies. I think that's really, really cool. All right, let's go to the top of that bracket. I think it was Auburn and Texas A&M. Chip, I'm going to start with you this time. Are we just advancing Auburn here?
I would not say that it would be that easy, and I would say that it's not going to be that easy because it wasn't that easy for Auburn when they played earlier this year. And Texas A&M lost back on March 4th. So I'm not going to say it's easy, but I would pick Auburn straight up here.
Texas Joel says this show has been super great. Thank you for saying that. Really appreciate it. Hit the like button, and thank you for being in here, everybody. Okay, let's go, Larry. Auburn. Are we advancing Auburn past Texas A&M?
Yeah, I think it's Auburn, Michigan State for the regional final.
All right. See, that protest is loud and true there with Iowa State advancing in our consensus bracket. Democracy lives. Mike McClure, Auburn versus Texas A&M. Who are we advancing?
Yeah, it'll be Auburn for me here.
Okay.
Not talking about covering the spread necessarily, but winning the game, Auburn.
And Tom Casale.
Yeah, just for the record, I don't disagree with Michigan State. I just played a little strategy there. But yeah, no, listen,
same stance. Yeah,
Well, just real quick, but when you're filling out brackets, it can't always be the take that like. Again, it's game theory versus who you think is going to win a certain matchup. And Mike laid out like where those edges might be when you're actually filling out a bracket. So I think it's important to note that we're filling out a bracket here. And so Iowa State makes sense on some level there. Tom, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I agree with Chip. I don't think this will be an easy game, but I kind of like the fact that was Auburn's worst performance of the year. Listen, it's always tough when you're facing conference opponents because they know each other so well, but close game, I give Auburn a slight edge here.
Zach?
Yeah, it's going to be Auburn as well. Big difference for me, probably the biggest from a matchup standpoint, is facing a team on their home court versus a neutral court. Texas A&M in that matchup, they were at home. They needed that win after 4 straight losses. Auburn, they raised their level on neutral court. We've seen them beat Iowa State. We've seen them beat Houston. They beat Texas A&M. All
right, before we close out this South region, instead of asking you individually, we've got Auburn, Iowa State in the Elite Eight here. Raise your hand if you want Iowa State to advance in this bracket? Okay, so it's 5-0 Auburn. Let's see. Chip Patterson. Any argument you want to make for Auburn? I mean, they are the number 1 seed for a reason here. It is Iowa State. We've got pros and cons against them. Your take on this matchup?
I would take Auburn like enthusiastically. If you give me Auburn against Iowa State, knowing that it's the Elite Eight, knowing that we're this deep in the tournament, I think that would be the Tigers to win for sure.
Okay, we got Auburn in the Final Four. Let's move on. Let's move on to the West, and we'll probably try to go at a slightly quicker pace. But the information has just been so good. But we don't want this show to be, like 2 hours. You might want the show to be 2 hours, but we probably don't want to go 2 full hours here. So let's go Florida, Norfolk State. I don't think we need to vote on this one. Florida's going to advance. But we do need to vote on this one. Larry, I'm going to start with you. UConn and Oklahoma. Interesting matchup here. Larry, get us going.
Yeah, as much as I, despise Dan Hurley and his antics, I do think that they will advance over Oklahoma. I just have not really been impressed with Oklahoma. I know they put together a little bit of a run and they have a great guard, but I think UConn does advance. And then hopefully their March Madness run will be over.
Tom, is it UConn?
I'm going to be in the minority. I agree with what Chip says about team chemistry and all that stuff in the locker room. I don't think this UConn team has it. I think they got a bunch of problems. This isn't an awful matchup for them, but slight lean to Oklahoma.
Zach?
Yeah, UConn for me, one and done with the Huskies.
Chip, did I already ask you UConn, Oklahoma? No.
So I will tell you that my expert bracket has UConn. I think I have like stirred on that. This game's going to be in Raleigh. So I'm like doing extra research, trying to make sure I'm ready for it. I don't know, man. The vibes are real bad with the Huskies. So I'm kind of lean towards the Sooners.
I get it. Okay. It's 2-2. Mike, you got to break the tie. UConn, Oklahoma.
UConn, but I think it was Zach had said it. I think it's extremely. There couldn't be a more clear one and done. So yeah, it's UConn, it's Oklahoma. Honestly, I wouldn't spend a ton of time worrying about it because you're almost definitely not picking either one of those teams over Florida
in the next round.
Right?
It's not. It's not going to make or break your bracket.
Yeah, get your 1 point or your 0 points in that game and move on. Memphis, Colorado State. I do think this one is an interesting 5-12. If I remember correctly, Tom, I'm going to go to you. Isn't Colorado State the 12 seed favorite in this game?
Yeah. When it came out, I like Colorado State. I'm a little nervous. I haven't seen one single person on Memphis. That always raises a red flag with me. Now, they do have some injury concerns. Colorado State ended the year hot. Sometimes that helps, sometimes it doesn't. But I do think right now, the way Colorado State is playing and coming together at the end of the year, I give them a slight lean here.
All right, Zack Cimini, where are we at in this one?
Yeah, I agree with what Tom just said. Sometimes you just got to ride the hot team, and that's Colorado State. 10 straight wins, really impressive as underdogs in the Mountain West tournament. Got those wins, beat Boise State. They really changed over after getting blown out by Utah State.
Mike?
Colorado State for me. I look, Memphis, I don't think this is the best draw for them for how they got to play in their conference tournament, but where I think they're going to struggle, they don't shoot free throws well enough. Colorado State does. And I just think that when you look at the best units on the floor, it's Colorado State defensively is the best side in this game. And
Chip Patterson, are we also on Colorado State here?
Yeah, just like to elaborate what we've sort of been hinting at, Tyrese Hunter has a foot injury for Memphis. He has only missed 2 games in his entire college career, and it goes back at multiple power conference stops. This guy is a dog. This guy is a leader. It is somebody that you would want on the court for Memphis in a game like this. They were able to hold off without him and go and defeat UAB, but it was by a small margin against the Blazers. So with a slight downgrade to Penny's Tigers, I will go with Colorado State as well.
Yeah, Larry, is it 5-0?
Well, I was on UAB, and I wish it was a small margin. Memphis was very impressive without Tyrese Hunter yesterday with Haggerty and Danejan. They're very powerful inside. So I think it's a toss-up game, but since we already have a majority, we might as well move on.
All right, we're going to move on. Colorado State advances, and they're going to play the winner of Maryland Grand Canyon. Listen, I think people think Grand Canyon is a kind of a fun story. They've been in the tournament before, but I think a lot of people think this Maryland team is going to go deep. Is there anybody that wants to make the argument for Grand Canyon advancing past the Terps? Go ahead, Zach.
Bryce Drew, can't discount him as a coach for getting Grand Canyon 3 years in a row. And I was impressed because even Ty Grant Foster, he's been struggling, but they have depth. Grand Canyon has true depth for a low team that you would consider a 13 seed. So I think it's going to be a challenge for Maryland that we saw peak in Big Ten play, but Grand Canyon, to me, I think they can advance here.
Okay. Anybody else want to make an argument for Grand Canyon advancing? Again, we can talk about the show from a betting standpoint tomorrow. If anybody has an angle, sounds like Zach, you might have certainly an angle tomorrow. If you're on that show, I know you have obligations as well, but in terms of against the spread, but anybody advancing Grand Canyon past Maryland, probably not, right? I didn't see any hands up there. So let's go ahead and advance Maryland on that one. Now we're going to go to Missouri and Drake. Mike, you and I and Larry were on the network show last Monday talking about this Drake team. So I'm actually going to open with you and then go to Larry. Do we think Drake upsets Missouri here, 11-6?
I think that they can, but I don't love it. I really don't love it for them. I ultimately went with Missouri here. I just think that the talent of the athlete on the floor and just what Missouri can do offensively and the style of play of Drake. If Drake wins, it's going to be a final bucket game for sure. But there's a scenario here where Missouri just is simply able to score 85 points in this game. And if that happens, Drake, in my opinion, is not keeping up. So as much as I wanted to be able to back Drake, I really don't love this matchup for them.
Larry, how much do we love the Drake?
I love it. And Missouri, slumped towards the end of the season, but a lot of that has to do with the teams that they're playing in the SEC. I love Drake. I just don't know that this was the best matchup for them. And also with Grand Canyon, that's a team that, in a different matchup could easily advance. And they have some legit athletes and talent. But I don't think I can pull the trigger on either of them.
Chip Patterson.
Yeah, Drake ain't played nobody.
Yeah, fair enough. Tom Casale.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. I bet Drake the last 2 NCAA tournaments, and those are 2 of the most gut-wrenching losses of my life, including the one against Maryland where they were up 7 with 2 minutes to go and didn't cover 3.5. Still keeps me up at night. But I think I wanted Missouri to play like a Grand Canyon. I think they would have beat them 105-88 and run up and down the court with them. To me, the first 10 minutes of this game is very important because if Drake gets a lead, they would play the old North Carolina 4 corners if you let them and just take 8 minutes off the clock. They're going to bleed it down. So I think it's important for Missouri to get out and make Drake play from behind, but I lean Missouri.
Big Cheesy says Missouri is so overrated, but Gipper's pick says Drake has to shoot 60% from 3 to win. Zack Cimini, your thoughts on Drake, Missouri? It sounds like we have Missouri advancing it here, but any argument otherwise?
Yeah, not a strong take for me. I'll just check Missouri there.
Okay, Texas Tech, UNCW. Let's start with you, Zach. Are we advancing? A lot of people like this Texas Tech team. Are we advancing Texas Tech here?
Yeah, Texas Tech to me, a very strong team, not one that I would make go beyond the Sweet 16, but first 2 games, they'll get it done.
Anybody want to make an argument for UNCW here? I can't imagine. Oh, Tom, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say I got to apologize to Seahawks fans for ruining this because I put on Twitter before this election show that they were my sleeper team. Then I said, don't beat Texas Tech, which is shockingly the 3rd year in a row I've done that to a team, which is amazing. But I think this is a team with the way they play could have bothered like a Wisconsin. They got a bad draw. Yeah. So, Texas Tech advances.
All right. I just want to point out, we got a lot of people watching. I'm going to say it again, cbssports.com/early edge. Get into our early edge bracket pool for sure. Larry Hartstein, we're advancing Texas Tech, right?
Totally.
Okay, so let's move on. This one's interesting. I know Mike has, when he comes back, he's going to have something to say about Kansas and Arkansas. I got to be honest, I really like how Kansas has played over the last couple of weeks. I do think this is a game they win. Chip Patterson, do you agree, or are we going with Arkansas here?
No, we're going to go with Kansas right here. This has got to be a pride thing for Bill Self in a season that has been really, really lost, where you can't get any kind of consistency from your squad. You're talking about next year when last year at this time you were talking about next year. I just don't think that going up against with John Calipari down there on the other end, you got to think that he's thinking in the back of his mind, he's not going to wind up on the losing end. So coaching advantage to the Jayhawks, even if there's kind of a raw talent advantage for the Razorbacks, and I'll take that coaching advantage in this first round matchup.
Larry, I think Kansas has a lack of talent, like in general, to normal Kansas teams. But I do think a switch was flipped when they got embarrassed by BYU. They looked more technically efficient, like on defense and on offense, at least in the games that I watched. Are we advancing Kansas here? Is it 2-0, or are we going 1-1 here?
Yeah, I'm really torn on this one. I can't even remember who I picked in the bracket. 2 coaches that I think their best days are actually behind them. 2 teams that don't really know how to execute at the end of a game, but there is a lot of talent on both sides. So I'm going to defer.
All right. Well, let's defer to Mike McClure then. Mike, I know you like Kansas in this one, right?
I do like Kansas in this one. Again, we were in the Discord talking about it, and I honestly thought that the number would open a little lower on Kansas. I was talking in the Discord. I thought we were going to see 4.5s, but with the way Kansas has kind of played and performed and the perception around them, I thought we were going to see 2.5. And it's just kind of gone to where I thought, where I make the number. So I like the Kansas side here. And I think whoever wins this game, I truly believe is very live to win the next round against St. John's.
All right. Zack Cimini, are we on Kansas or Arkansas?
Well, to Mike's point, I've got Arkansas, and I do believe that they will beat St. John's. But to me, Kansas is one of those teams. You see it after a team that's won the tournament, which we saw Kansas do 3-4 years ago. They're just not going to get back to that level again. This is the last hurrah for Hunter Dickinson, for DeJuan Harris. When they play with Arkansas, that's it.
All right, so we're advancing Kansas, and it sounds like we're advancing St. John's over Omaha. I mean, you guys are talking about a potential upset special in the second round. I don't think there's any arguments for Omaha, certainly not to win the game. So let's go back up to the top of the bracket and finish it out here. Florida, UConn.
UConn, one and done. Get them out of here.
Yeah, you already said that. UConn one and done, so we can go ahead and skip that one. Maryland, Colorado State. Does anybody want to make the argument for Colorado State here? I don't think so. Anyone?
Weight class. You can't guard Derek Queen. Terps move on.
There we go. All right. So we got Maryland moving on. Missouri and Texas Tech. Where are we at in this one? I'll start with you, Zach.
Just a slight lean to Texas Tech. I think they get to the Sweet 16, and that's it for them.
Okay. Tom, do you agree? Are we going to Texas Tech here?
Yeah, I wish Missouri got a different draw. Texas Tech's defense is miles better, so that's probably going to be the difference here.
Mike, are we making it 3-0 and advancing Texas Tech?
Yes. However, I think it's very close. I think this will be a game that's a 2-point spread. It's fascinating because I know I'm taking too long. Sorry, but I love breaking this stuff down with you guys.
No, go
Texas
ahead.
Tech is very good defensively. Missouri is like a poor man's version of this Alabama team. Alabama, they're so good offensively and can go make you have to score 85 points to win a game. So I lean Texas Tech, but it really is not a strong position for me.
Larry and Chip, we have Texas Tech moving on clearly, but do either of you want to make the argument for Missouri moving on past Texas Tech?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think that Texas Tech is two things. Number one, Texas Tech's had a couple of games over the course of the last 3 weeks or so where availability has been an issue. Chance McMillan, Darian Williams, those are two key players, two of their maybe top 3 or 4 scorers, if not leading scoring options for the Red Raiders, have been in and out of the lineup. They missed the game against Houston. They missed the conference tournament game against Arizona. Maybe one other game in that stretch as well. It would be a game where, if you're betting it, you got to check the availability. We got to see if they've gotten banged up or re-aggravated those issues in the first 2 rounds. And so with filling out my bracket before we tip it off, I think there is a distrust factor that I have for the Red Raiders in terms of, they are just a few re-aggravated injuries away from things getting really, really thin along that bench. So I've got Missouri over Texas Tech in my personal bracket.
Yeah, I think it's
looking.
Go ahead.
I haven't seen McCaslin that he has not updated their status yet. Those two guys.
Yeah, I think it's part of the reason that a lot of people in the chat think this region is absolutely wide open out there in the West. All right, St. John's, Kansas. This is interesting because it sounds like we have some people that like St. John's getting upset here. Zach, I'm going to start with you. Who's advancing, St. John's or Kansas?
Yeah, if it's Kansas or Arkansas, I believe they get past St. John's, who I think they can be defended by some of these stronger teams here, just from what I've seen in Big East play. So for me, I'm going to go with Arkansas. I know we've got Kansas on the graphic here currently, but I'm in the minority. I'm going to go with Arkansas there.
I'll tell you what, if you are watching this show live and you're not catching some of this analysis and some of the strength of schedule and some of these team comparisons, I would advise, like, when you're filling out, you might be filling out a bracket right now, but other brackets, maybe go back and watch this show because Ben's doing such a good job in bringing up the team comparisons up. You might already have a take, or maybe you don't. And so you might want to use these graphics as sort of, decisions on 50-50 calls beyond what the experts are saying about these games. All right, Mike, Kansas, St. John's, you also, it sounds to me like you like Kansas in this game too.
I do. Just again, I'm running numbers looking at what matchups and spreads would be in other games, right? And the spread on this game right now on my model, which is a little higher on Kansas, I make Kansas a 0.5 point favorite. On some of the others, it's a 1 point favorite on the St. John's side. Where I'm getting Kansas would be favored in this game is if Kansas comes out and beats Arkansas on the neutral site, I think people will believe and buy in just a little bit. But it's just, again, it's the same game theory, right? We've talked about it a couple times throughout the show. If you're watching, you probably or are listening on demand, you saw it earlier, but you see on the screen here, if you are watching, 71% of the field has St. John's winning this round. Just even if we're wrong on this and St. John's is a 4.5-point favorite, they're not going to be a 70% favorite on a money line at that particular point. So I think that this is all Kansas for me, because this game is truly a pick 'em is where I think it'll close.
Again, if you're not like delving into the game theory or allowing Mike to open that door for you, you're probably not filling out your brackets correctly. So it's not always about who the better team is. It's about what the better game theory play is. That's what Mike and I like to do on our Early Wedge DFS show, which is every Monday at 7:00. We'll be talking about the Valspar. That game theory is really important in brackets, in DFS golf, things like that. Chip Patterson, Kansas, St. John's.
There is not another coach in America that I want on game 2 in a tournament like this. We always talk about the 2-day scout. We always talk about the turnaround. When it comes to figuring out your opponent, putting in a game plan, teaching a game plan to your team to be able to go out there and execute, I don't want anybody else other than Rick Pitino. If St. John's makes it to the second game, which would be the second round of 32, or the Elite Eight, I will be very tempted to take St. John's in both of those situations.
All right, it's 2-1. Larry, are we making it 2-2 or 3-1?
That's funny. When Chip was going through that description of an elite coach
Bill Self,
who can make tremendous adjustments and, and always be prepared for that next tournament game, I thought he was talking about Bill Self. No, but I totally agree with you. Patino, St. John's, they're going to lock them down. They definitely would be afraid to go back to New York if they don't get out of this round.
Tom, you're the tiebreaker. No pressure.
Yeah. So, I always tell my kids that one of the most important things you can have in life is listening. Like in today's social media, it's all yap, yap, yap. So I listen to everything these guys say. And maybe I've been on too many shows with Mike, but he's been on Kansas. So I wanted to see where they landed. And, I wrote this in an article today and gave Mike credit. To his point, this isn't an awful region for Kansas. Right. They can play a grinder with St. John's. And I'll say this about St. John's. Listen, I think people in a week are going to realize how bad the Big East is. I like this team, but they're on Jimmy Fallon. They're all over the place. My guess is this. I think Patino's 1 year away. I think this is a good St. John's team, but I think they have some things that you can exploit in the tournament. I'm going to lean St. John's slightly, but I think Mike's call on Kansas here is going to be interesting as the tournament moves on.
All right, so that was a pick for St. John's. We got St. John's versus Texas Tech. Let's go back to the top of that region, settle that. I guess it's an Elite Eight game here. Florida and Maryland. Let's just go down the line here. We don't need much analysis. Chip Patterson.
Florida, deeper team.
Larry?
Yeah, Florida. I'm currently watching them dismantle Tennessee again in the SEC championship, and they're my pick to win it all, so I definitely have them advancing.
The guy's on a show, and he's watching tape at the same time. These guys grind. Mike McClure, where are we at on this one?
It's going to be Florida here for me.
All right, so we have Florida advancing. Tom, is it Florida for you?
Yeah, Chip nailed it. Sooner or later, playing 5 guys is going to hurt Maryland.
Yeah. Zach?
Keep it going with Florida.
All right, now St. John's and Texas Tech. A lot of varying opinions on St. John's. Zach, we're going to start with you, and we're going to go up. What's your play here, St. John's versus Texas Tech?
If it is St. John's and Texas Tech, like I said, I like Arkansas, but if St. John's gets to this point, that's when I would probably start jumping on their bandwagon. As Chip said, their momentum is going to continue. So it'd be a challenge for Florida, but against Texas Tech, I think that might be St. John's biggest victory of their 3 games in the tournament.
Tom, Jeff Stenberg says, a guy named Casale from New York is never going to go against Rick Pitino. Well, now's your chance to prove Jeff wrong. Where are you at in this one?
Well, this is an interesting region because I think everyone's making great points. Like I think Zach's right. Like I think Arkansas has a good chance in round 1. And I think Mike's right. If Kansas gets by round 1, I think they could be tough. And I think Chip's right that Texas Tech is dealing with some injury issues. So this to me is one of the more interesting sections of the bracket. But I kind of like what Zach said. I think if St. John's gets to this point, then if Texas Tech is injured, maybe that's where you start to see it. So I'm going to go with the Johnnies here.
Mike McClure.
Lean Texas Tech to win the game, but if these two teams match up, I think Texas Tech will be a 2.5, 3-point favorite in this game. And then I would take St. John's against the spread in that spot.
All right.
But
So it looks
for the sake of this, I'm going Texas Tech advancing.
okay. So it's 2-1. Larry, you can, and Larry, I know you need to step away soon. The good news is we have still a lot of beautiful minds here to talk the rest of the bracket, and we can kind of rotate in and out to the extent that people need to come and go. But Larry, it's 2-1, but you can make it 3-1 and advance St. John's here.
Yeah, I'm going to advance St. John's. If Texas Tech was fully healthy entering this tournament, might have a different opinion. But either way, Florida's coming out of this region. And thanks, guys. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot, and I will be watching the rest on tape.
All right. On tape indeed. Zach, and I know you have to go sometime soon as well. Let's see. We need Texas Tech versus St. John's, right? Did we? Okay. It was St. John's, right? Wasn't that the winner we picked? Okay. And now we just need a winner there. Chip, I'm going to start with you. Florida versus St. John's.
Gators.
Mike McClure.
Gators.
Tom Casale.
Here's where St. John's lack of perimeter shooting hurts them. Florida.
Yeah.
That's a great call.
Well,
Zach
Florida can hit a number that St. John's will struggle to hit.
Yeah. That's a good call. Zach, is he frozen? Oh, no, he's not. I'm sorry. Yeah. So do you like Florida? I mean, we already have them advancing. Do you like Florida in this matchup too?
I will say this. If this ends up happening, St. John's versus Florida, I think it gives the Johnnies an advantage. You look at some of the players on Florida, all the transfers. Rick Pitino knows these guys, especially Walter Clayton, who was at Iona to start his career. So I think it could be a very, very tough matchup there. I'd go with the Johnnies.
All right. So on that side of the bracket, the South and the West, we've broken them down. Auburn, Florida. We only have to do the East, and you all have done most of them or a lot of the Midwest. So this show's actually going to go a lot faster. You can see your picks that you voted on already in there. We'll have to take it a little bit of the rest of the way. Should we do, I guess, Ben, do you want to carry this one through, or should we just go to, the Midwest is at the bottom. Okay, so let's go up to the East. All right. Chip Patterson, I can't imagine you don't have Duke advancing in the first round.
No, Duke Blue Devils. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask anybody else that question. Feel free to have the courage to raise your hand and object if you want to. Mississippi State and Baylor. This is an interesting one where I have watched enough of Baylor to say it doesn't really feel like they're a super great team, in my opinion. Zach, where are we at in Mississippi State, Baylor?
This is one of the ones I'm not one to follow line moves in particular, but NCAA tournament, when they first come out, that's when you're going to have numbers that are off. And this was one of the biggest line flips of the tournament so far. So I'm going to go with the line move on Baylor's side.
Oh, interesting. I wasn't aware of the line move. Tom Casale, where are you at on this one?
Yeah, listen, these are two teams I haven't liked all season. I kind of flipped a coin here, but I agree with Zach that it was interesting that it was a short number and it flipped right away. So I'll lean Baylor.
Okay. Mike, are we going with the line movement?
Yeah, I'm on Baylor. I'm interested to see line movement that our guys are talking about here. I still show Baylor as a 2-point dog in this game. For me, is the WTF special of the entire first round where the wrong team is favored. Baylor should be favored here.
Okay, fair enough. Chip Patterson.
Yeah, Mississippi State, the Chris Jans teams that aren't good at playing defense. It was kind of an identity crisis right there. So I don't know. Baylor's not good defensively either. This one could get a little bit wacky. I'll agree with the guys and take the Bears.
All right. Baylor's going to advance there. Oregon versus Liberty.
Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, very interesting. Another 5-12 matchup. Speaking of the football reference, Chip, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'll go Ducks. Dana Altman's a boss when it comes to tournament games, and I think that Oregon ends up winning here.
Mike?
Yeah, Oregon for me.
Tom?
Yep, Oregon.
Zach, any argument for Liberty here?
Keep her going. Oregon Ducks.
All right. Let's go Arizona and Akron. This one feels like it could probably start with you.
This is tougher than
This
is a tough one here for the 4 and 13s. I think it's the toughest one because Akron, the way they got in, coming back from 18 points down, there might be something special with that team. In Arizona, another team like Michigan, so many ups and downs this year. You don't know what you're going to get from them on a game-to-game basis. But for the sake of the matchup, let's move on with Arizona.
Tom?
Yeah, I actually took Akron in my bracket only because of the talent that they have as a mid-major team with those two guards. Now, this is going to be a track meet. Arizona might beat them 92-78, but I do think Akron has a shot in this game, but I'll go with Arizona for the bracket.
All right, we're going with Arizona. That's 2. Mike, you want to make it a majority?
Yeah, it's a majority. And I'll say we talked about this in the Discord last night with Tom. I did like Akron at 15.5 where they opened. We told everybody it was going to move. It has moved to 13.5. I could see it going down to 12.5. I would lean Akron covering the spread, but it's almost like some of those Kansas City Chiefs games, like Arizona and Kansas City here in this spot. There's no doubt on the outcome of the game to me. Arizona's going to win the game somehow, some way. Wouldn't shock me if they don't cover spreads this game and the rest of the route in the tournament.
Britton Preston says, I like Akron. Chip, do you like Akron to upset Arizona?
No, not straight up.
Okay.
John Gross got a good squad, but I don't think the Zips are going to be able to handle not only do we have Caleb Love's potential, if he's going to shoot it 30 times, what happens if he hits like 10 or 11 of them? But you also have VCer, their big man down low, who really emerged over the second half of the season. I think he plays a role in a Wildcats win.
All right. Mr. Big says Akron is too small to be successful. Very interesting comment from Mr. Big. BYU VCU, I think, is an interesting matchup. I've heard a lot of people saying, hey, they like VCU in this one. Mike, it looks like you think this is an interesting matchup as well. I love BYU, by the way, just in general this year. But is this a tough matchup for them? Who do you have advancing in this one?
It's a tough matchup. It's an interesting one. VCU is legit defensively, and they play with the tempo that can really put them in a pretty good spot. They're very good at the free throw line. Also, BYU is not so good at the free throw line. I honestly look, it wouldn't shock me if BYU just figured out a way to score 85 plus points in this game and go away. But I personally think there's a scenario where this game is played in the low 60s and it's a final bucket that decides it.
Yeah, this seems like a bad draw for both of these teams. Tom, what do you like in this one?
Yeah, I took VCU. I thought BYU got maybe the worst draw of the first round. You look at them, they turn the ball over, VCU turns you over. VCU shoots threes, BYU doesn't guard the three-point line well. BYU shoots threes, VCU is one of the best perimeter defenses in college basketball. So I just think for me, the matchups go to VCU, and I think they're a little undervalued in this tournament, so I went with them to win.
Zach?
Yeah, I'm going to go with VCU as well. Bad matchup for BYU, as Tom said. This Atlantic 10 has shown, even if they're a one-bid, two-bid league, they've been good in these opening rounds with Richmond, with last year with Duquesne. So I'm going to go with VCU in the spot.
All right, Chip Patterson.
A little bit of a bigger BYU bet. If we want to just add, I'm getting outvoted here, and that's fine. I like VCU a lot. I personally chose BYU, and if you want one last piece that maybe is that last vibes related tilt of it, don't forget we are playing at altitude in Denver. That is going to be a little bit more of an adjustment for our boys from Richmond than it will be for the Cougars from Provo.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but are we at 2-2 then? On two of you had BYU, two of you had VCU, if memory serves. Mike, what was your call? Was it VCU?
I didn't actually give one. I was too interested in breaking it down. I was on the VCU side, but
3-1.
It's
3-1. Okay, gotcha. All right, VCU advances. Wisconsin, Montana. This looks to be, 3 versus 14. A lot of people like Wisconsin this year. Chip, are we advancing Wisconsin?
Yeah, we're advancing Wisconsin. We, on the Cover 3 podcast earlier today, we played out the entire bracket if their football teams were playing, and we actually took the FCS Power Montana with an upset over the flailing Wisconsin team under Luke Fickell, but that was in football. In basketball, I'll take the Badgers.
All right, Mike McClure?
Badgers.
Tom?
Wisconsin.
All right. And Zach, I can't imagine it's just Wisconsin for you as well.
Yeah, Wisconsin. Big Sky's been a no-show in the tournament.
All right, Zach, we'll start with you. Interesting matchup here. St. Mary's as a 7 seed versus Vanderbilt, the 10 seed. Zach, who do you like to advance?
I'm going to go with St. Mary's here. I know SEC is so strong with 14 teams in the tournament, but I think St. Mary's was underseeded. They are a good team, maybe the best Gales team over the last handful of years.
Tom Casale, you've been paying a lot of attention to this Gonzaga team for reasons that you had betting-wise pre-season. You were also just by default paying attention to this St. Mary's team. How good are they, and do you expect them to beat Vanderbilt?
Well, I don't have a strong opinion on this game, but one of the reasons St. Mary's defeated Gonzaga twice is because of their transition defense. They made Gonzaga play in the half court, and the Zags struggle to shoot from the three. So I think that's going to be important here. Can they get back and defend against Vanderbilt, who wants to run? I lean St. Mary's.
Okay, Mike McClure.
St. Mary's.
Chip?
St. Mary's defensively really let it slide over the last month or so. I mean, teams were just able to get whatever they wanted against the Commodores. And I think that while we think about St. Mary's defense, offensively, they are very crisp. And that's where I think they just get a lot of good shots, a lot of good looks, and Gales end up winning.
All right, we got St. Mary's advancing, and then we got Bama, Robert Morris. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time here. Hand up if you like Robert Morris to advance. I can't imagine I'm going to be seeing anything here. Again, on the betting show, if one of you like this against the spread, we can talk about it tomorrow, but right now we're just doing the bracket. Okay, so we've got Alabama versus St. Mary's here. Let's scroll back up and get this region finished out, and then we'll do the Midwest, which, again, you all have already voted and done a lot of that bracket. Duke versus Baylor. Does anybody like Baylor in this matchup? I really don't. Mike McClure, your thoughts here?
Nope. Duke.
Okay. Anybody? I mean, do we need to waste time on this? Just seems like a very easy path for Duke through 2 rounds.
This is one of those, like Chip said, with Texas Tech. You've got to wait and see on Duke's stats. Not necessarily Cooper Flagg, but Malik Brown. He needs to be available in this game against Baylor's bigs.
If he's not, do you think Baylor has a chance in this game?
Oh, yeah, definitely. They would have a chance against Duke if they don't have Malik Brown on the court.
Tom, do you agree if Malik Brown isn't playing in round 2, that Baylor has a very solid chance to beat Duke?
Well, it's interesting that Zach mentioned that, because when Brown got injured I was like, wow, Brown's out. That's going to be big. But then Cooper Flagg got hurt. So it kind of overshadowed, everything. But I don't know. Baylor just hasn't defended well enough for me in the interior to beat Duke, but I do think that injury could be interesting as Duke moves on.
All right, let's go back to the bracket here. We've got Duke moving on. Oh, Oregon and Arizona. Mike McClure, I'll start with you. What do you like in this one in terms of the team to advance?
I'll be on Arizona here. I think it'll be tight, but I like Arizona.
Chip?
I got the Ducks.
Okay, 1-1. Zack Cimini?
This is a very tight one. I would have to assess this once it actually got closer, but right now let's go with Oregon.
And Tom?
Yeah, this is a toss-up for me. I'll just lean Oregon because they're an experienced team, and Altman has shown he can do some damage when he has an experienced team.
If it had been a tie, I would have broken the tie, by the way. But it was 3-1 Oregon, so we're advancing them. Let's scroll down and see what we got next. I believe it's VCU in Wisconsin. All right, interesting. Zack Cimini, who do we have advancing here?
I'll go with the Badgers.
Okay, Badgers. Tom?
Yeah, I took VCU in my bracket just to have I was kind of chalk, so I wanted to have a little fun with a couple of double-digit seeds, but Wisconsin probably prevails.
Okay, Mike, are we trying to make a big, huge game theory play on VCU, or are we passing?
I'm passing there. I think that if you get them over BYU, it's good enough in the first round. But yeah, Wisconsin for me.
Chip, also for you?
Yeah, I'll take that too.
Okay, so we've got Wisconsin moving on. Now St. Mary's and Alabama.
Oh, Alabama. Alabama.
I think that's right. Mike McClure, is it Alabama for you?
Yeah, it's one I want to watch, though. I love chaos. As fast as you can get, as slow as you can get. Yeah, Bama's too much, though, offensively.
Tom, Alabama's too much?
This is probably where Alabama's athletes take over. But, Grant Nelson's going to be kind of big here. We have to check his status as well as the tournament goes on.
All right. And Zach, are we rounding it out? Is it a 4-0 sweep?
Yeah. Okay, move on with Bama.
Okay. So let's scroll out a little bit, see how this bracket looks. Looks like Duke, Oregon is we're in the Elite 8 right now, I believe. Duke, Oregon. All right. Let's start with Duke. Chip Patterson.
I'm going to assume that Cooper Flagg is back by this point, and that's absolutely huge going up against Oregon's front line of Nate Biddle and TJ Bamba. I will go Blue Devils.
All right, yeah, we're at the Sweet 16 at this point. Mike McClure, are we going with Duke over Oregon?
Duke over Oregon.
Tom, Duke?
Yes.
Zach?
I'll go with Duke, but it's tough against Dana Altman if he gets to that point, but Blue Devils.
All right. Let's go down the board to... What is it? Alabama and Wisconsin. Oh, a 2 versus a 3. Zach, who do we have?
Oh, man.
The over.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But to advance, I don't know if Alabama's going to be able to defend Tanji in this game, in that matchup. Let's go with Wisconsin.
Tom?
Yeah, listen, Alabama has issues defensively, but I was writing an article and I counted it up. They've scored 90 plus 18 times this year. That's insane for a college team.
Mhm.
I think old Wisconsin that I watched for 25 years, I would have liked them more here. New Wisconsin, who likes to get up and down the court, I don't know if that's the way to beat Alabama. Give me the Tide.
So I think it's 1-1. Mike McClure, what do we like?
I'll take Bama. Again, take the over, take Bama. And yeah, I think that I see it in the chat. I think Sears probably does score 30 in this matchup too. But I think they're ultimately too much.
All right. And Chip, are we on Bama as well?
Yeah. Roll Tide, roll.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's zoom out. Are we done with that bracket or that side of the bracket? I think are we? Oh, we have to pick a Final Four winner. Okay. So, So Duke versus Alabama to represent, let's see, what region? The East region in the Final Four. Zach, I'm going to give you first dibs here.
Yeah, I'll go with Duke versus Auburn and Auburn advancing.
Okay. So we have Duke advancing past Bama. Okay, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, listen, if you ever read or listen to my analysis, I almost never mention players. I don't think players matter that much in college basketball. There's the few exceptions, and Duke has one of them. And I just feel like if he's healthy, he's going to find a way to win some of these games later in the tournament because he's such a special, unique college player. So give me Duke.
All right, Mike McClure.
Give me Duke and give me the over half of a basketball dribbled off of Cooper Flagg's foot
In the final minutes.
But they'll still figure out a way to win.
Yeah, that's funny.
Chip Patterson, are we going with Duke past Bama?
Yep.
All right, so we've got Duke in the Final Four. We got Auburn, Florida, and Duke. Let's go to the Midwest, and let's complete the bracket that the chat and the viewers and the SportsLine members have already filled out a little bit for us. And I know, Zach, you need to bounce out. I think you've got some other obligations on HQ and otherwise. So, Zach, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
And we'll see you very soon on the Early Edge.
Thanks.
All right, Zack Cimini. Let's see what they have already done. Let's see what you all have already done. Can we zoom out just a little bit, and I'll just kind of go through some of the picks in this region. All right, so it looks like, go to the top, Ben, to the top of the region. There we go, the Midwest. Okay, so we have Houston and Gonzaga. We have Clemson versus Purdue. These are the teams advancing. Scroll down a little bit. I just want to get a sense of what this looks like before we make further picks. Illinois versus Kentucky. We scroll down to UCLA versus Tennessee. Okay, and we've got some picks already made from there, thanks to you all in the chat. Let's go back to the top, and let's round this thing out, Ben. We will go Houston versus Clemson, and I guess we'll start making picks on this one, okay? So, Mike McClure, I'm going to start with you. I guess we lost somebody else as I was looking at the bracket. Mike, talk to me about Houston and Clemson. Who wins that one?
That's Houston for me. I think Clemson's very interesting, but I'm not super high on them. Give me Houston.
Okay. And Tom Casale, what do we like, Houston versus Clemson?
Yeah, I like Houston. I looked at that, started looking at that Clemson-McNeese State game before we came on. I don't know if McNeese State's going to win, but I think they have a much better draw this year than they did last year where Gonzaga ran them off the court. That opening game could be a slog, like 58-55.
Yeah, McNeese State is a fun team to watch, just in general, pregame as well. And it's too bad that they're facing such a tough 5 seed in the first round. We'll see how that one goes. All right, so we have Houston advancing past Clemson, and now we go down to, let's see, we had Illinois past Kentucky. I do want to get your thoughts on Illinois, Kentucky. I don't know how seriously people are taking Illinois or Kentucky. I know Kentucky has some injury issues. Mike, in that matchup, now we've already picked Illinois for purposes of this bracket, but who would you have, Illinois versus Kentucky?
It's super tight. I actually went Kentucky in this matchup. I think it'll be a great game. I'm going to pull up some of my notes here on these two teams, but I did play Kentucky in that spot.
Chip, did you just throw a jacket on? Are you going on HQ soon or something?
Oh, yeah. Mike and I've got CBS Sports Network in 8 minutes.
Oh, okay. So let's go super fast then. Tom, forget about the Illinois-Kentucky question. Give me Illinois versus Tennessee. Who do you like in that one?
Yeah, I'll just say this is where I think the play-in winner has a chance. Like, I don't know what Mike thinks, but I'm not Texas, Illinois. Texas might be favored in that game if they were to win. I think it would be pretty tight. But I think Tennessee would slaughter Illinois. Like,
Yeah.
I would be all over the balls in that matchup.
Absolutely. All right, let's get out of the matchups. Let's scroll out so I can see what picks we have remaining here. Let's see. Houston versus Tennessee. Okay, so who's the pick, Tom, in Houston versus Tennessee?
I went Tennessee.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a great game. It's going to be a battle, but I just gave Tennessee the slightest of edges.
And Chip Patterson.
Oh, Vols, for sure.
All right, so we got the Vols. So we have the Final Four here, so we can just finish this out real quick, right? We've got, let's see, Duke versus Tennessee and Auburn versus Florida. We don't need analysis. Chip, who are the two in your finals here?
Duke over Florida.
Duke over Florida. And what about you, Tom Casale?
That's actually my Final Four. So I took same as Chip, Duke, Florida, Cooper Flag, MVP.
Tom, are you also on the network show at 2:00?
I am not. I'm not at that. I'm not at Chip's level yet. So.
You're always on the network show with me.
I'm down on the food chain. Mike and Chip are way higher than me.
All right, I'll tell you what. Here's what we're gonna do. Chip, we're gonna let you go because you've got a show to do in 6 minutes. Tom, before we actually close the show, I'm just gonna look at the chat and see if we have any questions. We have the bracket filled out. We have Duke over Florida. We don't need to do a final score. You all can come up with that.
157.
157. That's high. Okay. Well,
153. I don't know. All right.
Chip, thank you so much. We'll see you on CBS Sports Network at 2:00, where I'm sure you'll be breaking down more March Madness. Everybody go check him out.
That's right. See y'all.
All right. See you, Chip. Tom, I'm actually just going to look at the chat while we have everybody's attention. And again, we're doing this tomorrow from a betting standpoint at 12:30, same time, same place on the SportsLine YouTube channel. If you have any questions for Tom, I just wanted to spend another couple minutes while I have you just to see if there's anything. Mitch Wagner says Illinois is very overrated in my book. I think so too. I was surprised the chat had Illinois going past Kentucky, but then again, Kentucky's a weird team. Talk to me about Kentucky. Is that a team you have going out early?
I took Troy to beat them. It's just one of my upsets, only because now it sounds like Lamont Butler is going to play. Troy can create a lot of havoc. They need Lamont Butler for that game because they're not the same without him. He runs the offense. I just worry about these teams like Kentucky and Illinois who don't play defense. When you got to score 80 plus every night, it's hard to keep that going in the tournament unless you're like Alabama. So I'm not high. That region, I think we could see some craziness because I think there's teams in that. I'll tell you this. I think Tennessee, for how they play, has the best road to the Elite Eight out of any team in the outside of maybe Duke. I love Tennessee's road to the Elite Eight. So that could be a bet. I'm not sure what the odds are on that.
It's funny because Buckets was in the show on the front end and on the early edge today. He's like, and he was just kind of joking around. He's like, "Oh, Wofford over Tennessee." But looking at this, I totally agree.
Listen, Wofford was a team I thought had listen, I don't think it's that crazy. I think Wofford is an interesting team that can slow it down. And we've seen with teams like Tennessee, you're hoping they get by that first game. If the first game's always tough because it's neutral court, you're traveling. So, anything can happen in that first game.
Somebody wanted you to go over the play-in game in the Midwest. I'm trying to find which game that is.
Real quick, though, somebody said Tennessee only beat Illinois by 2 earlier in the season on a buzzer beater. I'm begging you not to look at those matchups. They are so irrelevant in this tournament. Don't tell me what happened in November. I could care less. It doesn't matter. It was at Illinois. It was early in the season. It's just that those games don't matter anymore.
Totally agree. 3-4 months ago, when you're talking about a young team trying to gel, just kind of a completely different story when you're looking at March. Texas and Xavier, is that the play-in that I think one of the viewers was talking about? Do you have an opinion on Texas versus Xavier, Tom?
I don't have an opinion there, but I like the winner to beat Illinois.
Okay. Xavier.
I think that's going to be a really, really. Those were the two play-in teams. Sia, I thought if they got in, could win a couple of games.
Because Xavier, correct me if I'm wrong, got Fremantle back, correct? That's kind of a big addition for the Xavier squad. Mike, we're closing the show out. I know you. I know you're going to be on HQ in just a couple of minutes.
Yep.
Do you have an opinion on the Texas Xavier play-in game? Because it was a subject of a question earlier.
Yeah, let me get the number. I did look up Texas and Illinois. I would make Illinois a -3 favorite. I think the market would probably open at 4, so a little interesting. Let's see. The Xavier game. I'm trying to remember. I did have Xavier favored slightly.
Okay.
In that game. Yeah.
Eric David says, thanks for the show, C and Tom. Totally worth rescheduling. A good client to be here live. Love to see that. All right. Well, Tom and Mike, you guys are going to be here tomorrow for the 12:30 show, correct? Are you guys able to do that one?
I'll be here.
Because we're going to be talking about these games from a more of a betting standpoint, but obviously you can apply whatever we talk about tomorrow to your brackets as well. We're going to have everybody's kind of favorite bets across all of the regions in this entire bracket, particularly obviously on Thursday and Friday. I think we'll just talk about lines that we like for the first round of the NCAA tournament. So you're definitely going to want to tune in to that. Tristan, we'll talk about more stuff, more questions like that tomorrow as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a great show. We had a big team, but some of these guys, they're cycling off. They got to be on HQ. They got to be on CBS Sports Network in 90 seconds, literally. And so hopefully you enjoyed the show. We're going to run this back tomorrow with some of our best bets. We'll see you then on the Early Edge.